All right, so this video here was sent to me by one of my friends who was a diehard Trumper, a diehard Elon Musk, diehard Doge. And so he sent me this to checkmate me. Like, he got me. I got him. I got him. So let me go ahead and pull it up real quick. And let me hit play.
Everyone knows that getting rid of the deficit will require some tough decisions. And that includes cutting back on billions of dollars in programs that a lot of people care about. But what should be easy is getting rid of the pointless waste and stupid spending that doesn't benefit anybody. We're calling it the campaign to cut waste.
You know, there's been a tremendous amount of...
Okay, so since Obama was for cutting waste and fraud, and that's what Doge is supposed to be for, he got me. He got me. You see this liberal president? When he was for it, you were for it. Now Elon's for it, you're against it. It's not that easy, bro. It's not that easy. You got to think a little bit deeper than that, bro. I think everybody with a fucking brain is for the concept of cutting fraud, waste, and abuse. I don't think that's the issue. I think the issue is how do you go about doing that? That's the problem, okay? So just to be clear.
Of waste and fraud in the government during the Biden administration, which estimated the federal government fraud to be $500 billion. What we're trying to do is get that number down to...
So he just mentioned a number, $500 billion. What's that? 500 billion, right? Okay. Who is verifying that? Who else has seen that number besides Elon and his team?
To a much smaller figure, save money for the American taxpayer, stop money being spent on things that I think very few taxpayers would agree make sense. You know, transgender animal surgeries. Or why are the 20 million?
Let me stop right there. So he just said something that was already debunked. He mentioned transgender animal surgery, when in reality, and what he was referring to, or what was also stated by President Trump during his address to Congress, is that there was $8 million on transgender surgery on mice. But the correct word was transgenic. And so what that is when they implant human genes or human DNA within a mouse, so that way when they introduce a disease into that mouse will, in the mouse's tissue, will have a reaction more closely to a human will react to a certain pathogen, right? And the purpose of that is so they can study different diseases and different treatments for diseases inside of a mouse. So in order to make that concept of using a mouse for testing more effective, they transfer genes, transgenic, into these mice so they can test. So that's two different words, transgenic and transgender. So in other words, they killed $8 million of transgenic study because they thought it meant transgender. This is what I'm saying. Like, who is looking into, who's reviewing, who is cross-examining what he's putting forth?
And people who are definitely dead marked as alive in the Social Security database.
All right, so that's another thing he just said. There's people who are dead that are marked as alive in the Social Security database. So I don't doubt that there are people who are in the Social Security database that are dead, and maybe it says that they're alive. But does that mean that they're actually receiving a check? That's a good question. But here's another key difference. Let me get something on the screen. Yeah. All right. So a simple chat GPT question. And so, and let me just say this. I posted another video in which I used chat GPT, and someone was like, oh, you're using chat GPT. Stupid motherfucker. What's the difference between going to Google and searching something and parsing through 1,000 different links versus going to ChatGPT or some other AI tool and it pulling the information in and condensing it down for you? But you can also see the sources of the information where it's pulling from. So to me, it's just a smarter, faster way to do research. It doesn't mean that the research or that the information is not correct. It just means that this stupid person who made that comment is just not familiar with using AI. But anyway, just want to go over some key differences between what Obama was doing and what Elon Musk is doing. So number one, budget oversight and legislation. Congress controls federal spending through its appropriations, and budgeting powers, which is in the Constitution. While the Obama administration proposed cuts to wasteful programs, Congress had the authority to approve, modify, and reject these proposals. The reason why this is important is because when certain cuts are made, such as like the USDA cuts that happen at the very early stages of the administration, you need this type of oversight because the Congress members who represent these districts, they can have some input into how these types of cuts will affect their local economy. So all of these farmers now crying and complaining because they had contracts with USDA. Is it US not USDA? Is it USDA? Yeah, USDA and USA. USA was the one that I meant, but it's also USDA, right? So when these things get cut, there's actually an impact to people on the ground that has these contracts. And so if you own a farm and you're counting on this money and you're making future plans based on this money, all of a sudden it gets cut and no one consulted anyone who's representing you. Like, that's not good. Number two, government accountability and transparency. Congressional committees such as the House Oversight and Government Reform Committee and the Senate Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs Committee evaluated Obama's waste cutting initiatives. Lawmakers held hearings and called administration officials to testify about the government inefficiencies. This is my problem with DOGE. Where are the hearings? Where are the people that are a part of this being called into Congress under oath and having the information that they're presenting be cross-examined? That's not happening. Bipartisan support and opposition. Okay, when Obama did this, he had some Republicans and some Democrats agree with some of the stuff he was doing, and he had some Republicans and some Democrats that opposed some of the stuff that he's doing. But they had a chance to kind of weigh in because they can see, like, hey, I come from this type of state that depends on this funds that helps generate X amount of GDP, or that contributes to the GDP by X number, so all spending that you don't agree with isn't necessarily wasteful. Like, okay, you don't agree with it, but does it actually have a multiplier effect in the economy? Is that even being looked at? And that's the problem that I have with this. Legislation on waste reduction. And so this means that Congress worked on laws aimed at reducing waste, including strengthening the Government Accountability Office and expanding the power of agency inspector generals. So in other words, having watchdogs to start looking at stuff after you identify stuff. So I think that's enough here to kind of demonstrate what we talked about this before, the person that sent me this video. Bro, it's not the fact that anybody's against cutting. The problem is who is looking at the cutting, who is verifying this, who is cross-examining this. Like, in my career field, people who do code, they can't test the code that they create. Right? So there's a person that's testing the code, it's a person that's testing the code, and there's a separate person that's actually deploying the code to production. Right? And so in this case, they're doing the development, the testing, and the deployment to production. Like, that makes no fucking sense. So yeah, that's my problem. Not the cuts, not looking for fraud, waste, and abuse. The process. That's the problem. And I think that's the problem most people have with this.